Deep breath. Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Biomed Bros Podcast. We're here today with me. My name is David, and, I'm one of the Biomed Bros. I'm here with my co-host, Joe.
Yep, I'm Joe. I am also one of the Biomed Bros. We also have a few other people that we're thinking of bringing on. And so at this time, just myself and David are here. But when our other guests eventually come on, other members of the Biomed Bros, we'll let them introduce themselves as well.
Absolutely. So today, since we're kind of starting off this podcast, we're going to just kick it off by giving a little bit of a blurb about ourselves, where we're coming from, and, what this whole thing is about. Because we want this podcast to be a way for other medical students and anyone who's interested in the medical field, specifically moving towards, being a physician, to be able to kind of know what it's like to be in medical school. We don't claim any specific fame or anything like that. We're a couple of dudes that are in medical school right now and trying to get through just like everyone else.
Right. And we also think that we're kind of just normal guys, right? We're not going to, cookie cut anything. We're going to tell you exactly what we think and exactly what our experiences have been. We're different than the quote unquote influencers who you may see on YouTube or Instagram. That's not our motive and that's really not our agenda. We want to keep it, 100% real and just straight up explain what we have found, what we found easy, what we found difficult, give advice, and try to help our listeners as much as possible.
Exactly, and that means that we're gonna, in some way, try to interact with you guys. We might be doing that through a little email newsletter. We might be doing that through Instagram, just posts about when episodes drop. And, we want to interact with you guys to kind of see what are actually some questions that people might have, because we know the questions that we had when we came in, and we have the questions that we have right now as we're moving through, but we also want to know what you guys might be interested in hearing about as we're going through. So but to start out, we just want to kick off and talk a little bit about ourselves. So, Joe, how about you give them a little listen?
Sure. So, again, my name is Joe. I am now a second-year medical student. Not quite officially yet, but I just finished my first year, and I start my second year in a little bit less than a month. For privacy's sake, David and I and our other Biomed Bros probably won't say what schools we go to. Mm-hmm. However, we do attend different schools. So that gives us another unique perspective where I go to an MD school and David goes to a DO school. So I think that'll be really interesting to hear about the differences and more like the similarities, which we found this past year. But like I said, I'm a second year medical student now. I spent 6 years in the Army, and so I'm a little bit of a non-traditional student. David is as well. And we met doing a biomed master's degree. So that's kind of where the Biomed Bros name came from, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But I got interested in medicine kind of later in life, which gave me my late start. But it's been really, really fun so far. And one thing that we've found is that we love helping people and we love giving advice. And so that's why we kind of started this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for me, again, my name is David. Like Joe, I also just finished the first year of medical school, but my situation is a little bit different because, unfortunately, I'm going to have to repeat the first year of medical school. And we'll talk about that in later episodes, I'm sure, but we both have interesting and different perspectives on how medical school works. Like he said, I'm in a DO program and he's in an MD program. So there's some really interesting differences, but also some really cool similarities. Hopefully, in medicine, we're really not learning that many different things. We really want to be on the same page as providers across the board. But we'll talk about that later. For me, I was also a non-traditional student. Although I suppose technically I have a little bit more tradition in my studenting because like I did have that bio degree background for my undergrad. But like Joe, I came to this master's program after doing a few years out of the school system. So I got to work for a little while, as a medical assistant and as a phlebotomist. And, both of us have experiences that have kind of shaped how we view learning and how we view medicine because of where we've come from. Because we're a little bit older than perhaps all medical students would be when you come in, because there's a lot of people that come in right out of college and we didn't do that.
Yep.
Which is, pretty cool. So yeah, we went through the same master's program, and like he said, the reason that we're making this podcast is because we want other people to get that experience of being able to hear, okay, this is how people think in medical school, or what actually goes on, like that kind of stuff. So.
And just, the normal day-to-day life, I was gonna say 9 to 5, but it's way earlier and way later than that. So I'll say the 6 to 10.
That's pretty accurate.
The 6 to 11 is more like it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
exactly.
So I'll talk about kind of how we became the Biomed Bros.
Yeah.
So one of our other friends, Riker, he might make an appearance if he wants to come on the podcast, but he and I, during our first year of our master's, were graduate assistants at our university, so we taught anatomy and physiology. And so he and I knew each other for like 3 days before the first day of class. And so our first ever course was anatomy, and so Riker and myself walked in and we sat down and we saw this group of other guys, which were David and Bryant and all of them. So we sat near them because we're like, oh, they looked cool. And so, to make a super long story short, mostly in anatomy, because a lot of us were in the same cadaver group, we just got to talking. We were all very similar, and really quickly we all became super tight-knit friends. And that never stopped, throughout the entirety of graduate school. We studied almost every single day together. Mm-hmm. And then even once we all graduated and went slightly separate ways, because some of us went straight into medical school and others took a gap year but are starting soon. Mm-hmm. We've remained friends, and it's a group of lifelong friends now, and we've had a blast. And we just thought that bringing everybody together with our unique perspectives would be something that people would want to listen to.
Yeah.
And so hopefully that we would have unique and interesting advice for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And this is fun for us too. And it's funny that you mentioned like the first day, because I remember walking in and being like super scared because I just moved across the country, and I walk in and I saw you and Riker sitting up at the front because you guys were there really early. Mm-hmm. And kitted out in like dress shirts and slacks and looking very professional. And when I sat down, my heart actually kind of sank. I was like, oh no, this grad school thing is going to be really crazy. Like, these guys are here so early. It was like, but I was there 10 minutes early too. So
what did I get myself into?
Yeah, I'm like,
but little did they know, we were only dressed up that way because we had, we were teaching all day before that, and the real me, who I'm sitting here in this chair right now, I'm in shorts and a t-shirt and Crocs. So that's the real me, but
yeah, exactly. Neither of us is like dressing up every day on purpose to be like, all right, we're gonna be here and we're gonna be stupid professional no matter what. Although obviously when we need to be,
right, of course, yeah. And that's a good theme for this podcast. We're not trying to be anybody that we're not.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I mentioned earlier with like the influencers and stuff like that, like. Neither David or myself, we don't wake up at 4:00 in the morning and then run 14 miles and then read all of first aid before class and then sit in class for 9 hours and then do 8,000 Anki cards that night and then, never need sleep. That is not who we are, and that's, generally not how medical school goes for 99% of people.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So, yeah, we're just, normal people and living a normal life in medical school.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's interesting that you talk about that because, well, I don't know if it's... the funny thing is, everyone that's presenting themselves on Instagram in medical school is probably a little bit of a liar.
Yes.
Like, you're in the grind and in the suck just like everyone else, and there really isn't a day that goes by where people don't look at themselves and go, okay, am I actually doing the right thing a little bit by being here? Like, that's just not how medical school works. It's kind of big and scary.
Yes.
Doable.
Yes.
But big and scary. And, you know, we want to demystify that. We don't want you to take on that influencer look at us because we're not influencers. We don't care about that. Obviously, we don't want to be like weenies that are out here not being appropriate in our fields. But we don't want people to have a look at medical school that is, it's all perfect. And if you're not perfect, you're not doing the right thing.
Right. Like, you know, the perfect notes. Like,
Oh,
your
gosh.
notes in medical school don't need to, you know, look like a beautiful book. And, you know, you don't need to take 12 hours every day rewriting all of your notes to make them look so beautiful and perfect, because you probably won't have time to do that.
If you do,
If you
we don't
do-
know what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, shout out. I know people personally in medical school that have done really well and done that. Shout out to them.
That's crazy. That's amazing.
But yeah, it's interesting. But, you know, another thing that we want to talk about a lot in the podcast are differences.
Yes.
The biggest theme in medical school is that there's no, like, specific way to get yourself through. Like, if I do this and this and this and this, then I will, you know, graduate and become a physician. Every single thing that you do, you know, is going to be different than somebody else.
Oh, 100%. And, like, you know, the weird thing, too, is everyone in medical school tends to compare to each other somehow.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, that's kind of what we do as humans. Like, we're going to look at each other and be like, okay, is what I'm doing making sense to everyone else? Because we're trying to get through the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we all learn differently to some extent because we're different people. We all might, you know, I might benefit a whole lot from being like, oh yeah, I'm going to do all these notes and practice questions and Anki cards. And the next guy might look at that and be like, I just need to sit in the lecture and listen.
Exactly.
And then they have everything. They can go and test on it and be fine and get out in the world and be all good. But, you know, that's not my experience.
Right. Yeah, to kind of sum this up, because we're kind of long on our first
On our
pilot
intro.
episode, on our intro episode, but you know, it's interesting because our pastor on Sunday talked about, like, when you first meet somebody, what do you say? You ask them, oh, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do for a living? And that's, you know, even though it might be like a kind thing to say because you're trying to act interested in the person, but subconsciously, whatever that person says, you immediately judge them, whether you want to or not. You know, they could say, oh, you know, I'm a dermatologist. And as people in medical school know, they make the big dollars. So subconsciously, you're like, oh, wow, they make a lot of money. Or they could say, oh, you know, I'm like a janitor at a school or something like that. And then instantly your mind goes a lot lower. The point of that story being, run your own race in medical school. If something is working for you and it is different than what everybody else is seemingly doing, then keep doing what you're doing, right? Or, you know, if you're doing something and it's not working, then go ahead and go outside of your bubble and try something else. But run your race. Don't do something because, you know, somebody was like, this is the 100% way of doing something, right? So kind of, you know, stay in your lane, you know, put your horse blinders on.
Oh, yeah.
And run forward every single day. And I'm sure everyone listening will be totally fine in medical school.
Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, that's kind of the exact thing that we want to go with this podcast. So thanks for tuning in and listening to our intro episode. If you want to listen to more, they're going to be up pretty soon.